Hello guys and gals. So what is it that we're going to be taking care of today on the van? That is the question. Well, I'm sure like everyone else, you live in a neighborhood where there's a-holes that do certain little petty thefts and whatnot. Well, where I live is no exception. Does anybody notice anything different about this keyhole right here? It's missing, isn't it? Well, let me show you something. So this is just a little plastic cover that I happen to have, like a little grommet or something like that to plug a hole. I've got a whole box of them in various sizes that come in real useful. Well, that used to be in there, and somebody came by with a screwdriver or something similar and tried to get into the back of the van. And I'm pretty sure they succeeded, because one day I came out to the van in the morning and I found that the door was slightly ajar like that. And we had just come back from a little, I don't know, a weekend bike ride or something like that. So I thought, oh no, this is something that we probably did. Shoot, we forgot to, completely close the door at night. Well, that was my thinking, and it wasn't for another couple of weeks before I happened to look over and I noticed that the shape of this hole looked odd. And when I tried to put my key into it, of course, it wouldn't work anymore. And with a couple of more jiggles of the key, the thing just popped out completely. Well, I thought, no big deal, because I know there's at least one other keyhole on the van. There's not one there, right? There's not one there, but fortunately, there's one on the driver's side. So my thinking was, if I ever get locked out, my key fob doesn't work, at least I can use this one. Well, a few months went by, and one day I happened to notice that looks reamed out as well. And sure enough, it gave me a lot of trouble with the key. For one thing, there's a bit of a flap, and that was getting in the way. It was all mangled. I had to pull that out with needle nose pliers. Found that with a little bit of work, this one still works. So thank goodness that still works. I started thinking to myself, I'm gonna have a real problem if I lose my key fob, or I get my key fob wet, let's say, and it doesn't work anymore, and I need to use a regular key. I actually have another spare key that's just the physical key for this very reason. I'm gonna be real screwed if somebody comes around and finally completely gores that thing out. I will have absolutely no access to the van unless I smash a window. Well, I don't want to do that. And here's another scenario. Let's say that my key fob is just fine, but the batteries died in my vehicle. I'm in the same situation. Without access to a physical keyhole, I'm not going to be able to get into the van. Now, let's say my battery were to die. The battery's actually in the vehicle. It's in the floor underneath the driver. So in order for me to recharge it, I would have to either get into the vehicle, or Ram has actually given us a provision for this. So if you go under the hood, you can actually recharge your battery or jump your car by placing the positive there. You see the cover's marked positive, and the negative here. But of course, in order to do that, you've got to gain access to under the hood. Well, if the lever to open the hood is here and you can't get into your vehicle, what are you going to do? So I decided I needed a way to remotely operate this hood release latch from outside the vehicle. So that's what we'll be talking about in this video. So I started investigating what I might be able to do about this situation. So if you take a look at the latch under the hood, there's the hood release cable right there. So you see it goes in there, and when you yank on the hood release on the driver's side, it pulls that cable to the right, and when it does, it opens this latch, allowing this hood latch right here to become released. So what I figured is I probably need to just find another way that I can pull that to that side and have external access to it. So what I came up with is, last Christmas, I redid the brakes on my wife's vintage bicycle. I had some leftover cable laying around, and that's about I guess about 6 feet or so of the cable and about 3 foot of the housing. And I figured this would probably be adequate. So the idea is to have the cable attached also to this lever right here, and have the housing butt up against this area, and then have the cable, the whole thing, run down there somewhere where it can be accessed from the outside. I should just be able to reach my hand under the van, pull on the latch, and I'll be able to open the front hood. So I started taking this guy apart. So I pulled the screws. There's just 3 mounting screws here, and then started looking around inside. And the original idea was to drill a tiny hole right here. I wanted to make it as low as possible so that I would get the most leverage on that lever arm there, because you can see the factory one is installed pretty low, right? So I don't want to have to yank on that cable too hard. So the lower I can mount the cable, the better. So I was thinking about putting the housing here somewhere, butting it up to there somewhere. So that would mean drilling a hole right about here. So I got ready to do that. I got my drill bit out that would allow this diameter of cable to pass through. Took this thing apart, and then what I noticed here, let me remove this cable for a second so we can pull this out and get a better look. So what I noticed after removing this housing is that there's actually a factory hole here that's probably going to work just fine. You see it, it's right there in the lower corner. You can't get much lower than that. So I'm going to try to see if I can make that work. And then I even think I can get my secondary cable to just fit in this same area right here, because this should keep it from being yanked through the hole. So as you see here, I was able to feed the cable in right there and feed it into this little notch on the lever arm. And I think after I replace the factory cable in this slot and in here, like I said, it should keep this from sliding out, because the diameter of that end is too small by itself. It will definitely come through. But if I have that other piece impinging, it should keep it from sliding out. So you see, the idea is the cable housing is going to rest right up against that hole, and so when you pull the cable, the housing will remain in place, the cable will move, and when the cable moves, it should pull on that lever arm and unlatch it. Here's another shot of it. So what I've done is I've fed my new cable into this hole here. It goes right along the other cable, comes out right here, and there's actually a little clamp right here that the factory cable runs through. So I'm going to actually utilize this exact same clamp, and then in a second I'll run this wire down into the engine bay and hopefully to the right of that part of the frame down there. Okay, so that's what the factory cable alongside my new cable looks. See, they're both going into the same retaining hole. We should be good to go. Let me try to button this back up and see if I can make it work. Okay, what I'm going to try to illustrate to you guys now is I'm going to pull on my cable, and you see when I do, that lever arm moves. So I think this is going to work great, and I didn't even have to do any drilling. Sweet! Okay, here it is, all completely buttoned back up again, fully tested. It definitely works great. And the bonus was I didn't have to drill that right there, because that would have been a little bit difficult, I think, to drill a teeny tiny hole in this thick gauge of steel. So again, the cable goes in there, comes out right there, goes into this retaining clamp here, goes down there. Let's see, where is it? There it is. I got it tucked in behind some factory wiring there that I think is for the turn signals, And then you can see I have it coming down right there to the left of the frame, right there. It turns out there's a bolt there that I'm going to be able to use. I'm going to create a little, cut a little piece of L channel so that I can drill a hole, and very much like this end, I'll be able to put the end of the sheath of the cable up against that so that I can just pull the steel cable inside of this jacket, and only the steel cable will move and the jacket will not. Here we are under the vehicle, and this is that little bolt that I'm planning on using. By the way, this little plastic nut is what was covering that bolt. So I pulled that off and fashioned this little piece of L aluminum. So that part, the bolt will go in there, and the cable will go in there. And the cable ferrule end will rest right on this surface so that it doesn't move. And then I found a appropriately sized nut to go into that bolt. All right, let's put this on there and see how it goes. So there it is. I've got the L bracket mounted to the bolt. I have yet to fully screw down the self-locking nut, but that's basically how that's going to be. See, I should be able to pull on this now once this is tightened up. And the jacket of the cable shouldn't move, so the only thing that'll move is the cable itself. All right, let's tighten this up. Okay, there it is, fully installed. I'm going to go ahead and give this cable a tug here, and hopefully we'll be able to hear the sound of success. I hope you can hear this. Let's go. Yes, the sound of success. I love it. It took me a minute to figure out how I was going to terminate the lower end of this cable that's poking out from underneath the vehicle. And whenever I'm in such a predicament, I usually just walk down to the local Home Depot and I walk the aisles until I find something that looks suitable. So I like this right here because I feel like the cable can wrap around that, so that'll be a nice thing to tug on. I could probably use these to then cinch the cable together, but I think I like these better. So I'm going to try to mock this up and go from there. So I mocked this up, and that just looks beautiful. Look, there's a perfect place right there to put your finger in to yank on this. So all I've got to do is crimp this and then cut this extra length of cable. Of course, probably gonna end up making this a little bit shorter so it doesn't dangle down quite so far from the vehicle. Maybe put it up there somewhere. Might even try to find something up underneath the vehicle that I can hook it onto, maybe even with a screw. So I wasn't sure exactly what tool to use to crimp this ferrule, so I figured I'd just pull out everything I've got, and ultimately I think this one here is going to be the one that works the best. Okay, so I've been able to get everything all crimped down, so the ferrule's crimped down nicely. I also added this little thing right here that I got again from a bicycle cable. Crimped that down because there were some sharp edges there. So it's a little longer than I wanted it to be, but I had a hard time getting the crimping tools up into this tight space, so I had to crimp it down here. So the idea though is just going to be to put it onto this extra little bolt here that's sticking out, and I'm just going to try to find a thumb screw to keep that up there when I don't need it. And when I need it, we'll be pulling it down, and bingo! Now you guys might be wondering, do I really want to post this video online letting people know that there's access to under my hood from under the vehicle? I'm not too worried about it. Since those guys came around, I've installed various security measures in my van, something I'm actually going to go over in the future. So I've got a security system installed that protects every single door. I've got a glass break alarm, and I've got cameras in the van that also give me notifications if there's any kind of motion detected. So I think I'm pretty safe now. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If so, I'd appreciate a thumb in the upward orientation, and consider hitting that subscribe button for future videos like this. All right, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.